Good evening. Wednesday night, April 22nd. Any hobos out there waiting for stories? It's David in the Magic Library. Check in and say hi if you're out there. 9 o'clock. There's Donnie Porter. Hi. And Chris. Welcome back. Beth. There's Sheila Marie Wall. Where were you last night? I didn't see you last night. It was kind of quiet. There's Charles. Nancy. So welcome back. Grab your bourbon. Settle in. I'm back to bourbon tonight. Evan Williams. So cheers, everyone. Hi, Lisa and Jackie. And the other Lisa. And there's Hoof. So some of you have been asking what the place looked like, Casa Fabulosa. And I don't have a lot of pictures of the interior of the place. Hey, Margie and Dominic. I had more pictures, and we had pictures of the restoration and stuff. But I don't know if you remember on, I think it was HGTV, there was a show. I don't think it's on there anymore. It's called If These Walls Could Talk. And they contacted us, and we were going to be on that show twice. But they asked us if we had pictures, and this was, 20 years ago, so this was digital cameras were just, were just coming into their own. So I had a number of pictures, and I sent them to their producer. And I didn't have time to make copies because they needed them right away for the show. And I sent a lot of really great pictures, and then they ended up getting a new director or something, and they kind of had a shake-up, and they never sent me those pictures back. And then I had a couple left, and then a new guy took over, and he got in touch, and he said, "Oh, we'd love to have you on," and begged me to send some pictures. And I said, "Well, last time I sent you pictures, you never sent them back." He said, "Oh, I'll get them. I'll make sure we send them back." And so I sent him a bunch of pictures, and the same thing happened. It never happened. So somewhere in some television production company's office, there's a bunch of pictures of what the place looked like on the inside, and us doing the restoration work, scraping the paint and painting in all those colors and things. But there are a couple things I do have, so we'll do a little show and tell right now. When you were on the holiday house tour, they would give you a little gift, and a local artist, he would do like kind of little ink sketches. So this is our house, our little picture we got the first year we were on the holiday house tour. And then we got another one for 2003, but I gave that one to the guy who lived there after we lived there. But I got that. And then, let me see. I mean, there's pictures of us together, but you don't see a lot of the interior. So there's Rocky, Bess, and Fritz, by the way, in the middle. And there's Beth at one of our Thursday/Monday night/Tuesday night dinner club and the dining room. And that was when it was green when we moved in. And then it was painted Venetian red. Yeah, you can see there I am at the mantle in the dining room. There's Ramon and his sister Sylvia, the one I named the gargoyle for. What else we got up there? That's Ramon's sister's brother-in-law and his mother, Lily, in the kitchen. So you can kind of see what color the walls were in the kitchen. We had kind of bright yellow walls with kind of a bluish-green trim, and that's what color the tiles in the kitchen were. But, yeah, there's the gang one night. Tad looking like a dork with his eyes half closed. But that's in the dining room. And then, do I have any on here? So down there, it was one of our parties, a birthday party. Oh, this, by the way, that's Victor, the Cuban guy who wanted to pet the possums on the dryer, and that's Sylvia. Here, this is Fritz in my lap right here. If you look, you can see the walls. That's the gold anaglypta that we had in a lot of the house. So that's what the front parlor looked like. Can't get a good angle. Ugh. It's hard doing show and tell on Facebook Live. What else? That's Gregory right here holding Fritz. And he's standing in front of the grandmother clock, the one that chimes 13 o'clock all the time. So if Gregory's on, tell Gregory hi. But yeah, I asked the gang to pull out pictures if they had any. And maybe tomorrow night they'll be able to put up some pictures as well. But yeah, I don't have too many pictures of Casa Fabulosa. All right. So that was show and tell. And last night, what did we do? We left off with a cliffhanger. So Ramon had gone off to see his mother in Texas. He told me not to be a hobo before he left. And then I went to bed and I started hearing strange noises. Okay, so I did find some of the old jewels from the ceilings as I was looking for pictures. Look at these are the faux jewels we had on the Corinthian leather, Lincrusta. Okay, so these were all over the place. We had them on the ceilings and in the butler's pantry. We had all kinds of stuff. All right. So, the cliffhanger where I left off last night was, and it slowly dawned on me that I was afraid because I was hearing these weird noises. So let me back up a little to where I had just gone to bed, and we'll pick up from there. Okay, so the warm weather was upon us, but nonetheless a bit of chill remained wherever I walked in Widmer House. I toyed with the idea of doing some work up on the third floor, but then I decided to get to bed at a decent hour for a change. So I jumped under the covers and I quickly drifted off to sleep. I had dozed for perhaps an hour or so when the uneasy stirring of the dogs on the bed interrupted a bad dream I was having about drag queens in a cemetery. Despite the darkness, a small patch of light from the street illuminated the bed through the window. I could see the dogs as they stood and looked toward the hallway, a low growl barely audible as Rocky and Fritz lowered their heads and stared. Pulling them toward me to calm them down, I listened. At first I could hear nothing, but then a long, slow wooden creak echoed outside my bedroom door. All three dogs cocked their heads and listened. I thought maybe a door had swung open by itself. And I waited to hear more. A minute passed and I heard nothing, so I lay down and waited to fall back asleep. Once again, however, a long, drawn-out creak resonated slowly in the hallway and sent chills down my spine. I thought someone had surely broken into the house, and I attempted to visualize his location in relationship to the bedroom. Another moment passed, and I heard a third long groan from the floorboards in the hall, this time closer to the bedroom in front of me. All the while, I could see the dogs as they cocked their heads in response to the noise, and it slowly dawned on me that I was afraid. Almost paralyzed, I listened as something seemed to make its way up and down the hallway that ran from the large room at the front of the house to the small bedroom at the rear. After several minutes' hesitation, I finally mustered the courage to hurl myself out of bed, grab the Louisville Slugger that was propped against the wall, and switch on the light. Making as much noise as humanly possible, I rushed out of the room to confront the unseen intruder, but the bat was wielded overhead as I ran the length of the corridor, and I turned on several other lights in the process. But finding nothing, I searched the other 2 floors and even looked around the attic and basement before returning to my bedroom. Somehow the house had lost the vacant and airy feeling that had caught my attention earlier in the day. So I closed the door this time, and tucked safely under the covers with the dogs, I tried to convince myself that I hadn't gone crazy and had only imagined the sounds of an intruder in the hallway. After several minutes, I relaxed, comforted by the thought that the closed door would offer some sort of protection in the unlikely event that I heard the strange noises again. Even if they did start up anew, I'd be fine, I told myself. as long as the weird noises did not bother me inside the bedroom. Another minute or two passed, and a sharp groan on the floorboards echoed from the left side of the bed, just inches from where I lay. The dogs quickly got to their feet, and Fritz growled. My skin crawled at the realization that the noises had not only returned, but they had entered the room. Fighting the welling sense of panic, I forced myself to take slow breaths and reassured myself that all would be fine as long as the noise stayed on the left side of the bed. Even though it seemed like it was immediately to the left of my bed, I told myself that it was possible the noise was really in the hallway and only sounded like it was inside the room. Several minutes of silence dragged on, and I dreaded the idea that the odd creaking would eventually move around the bed to the right-hand side where it would be harder to downplay. Suddenly the floor let out a long moaning squeak that ended with a loud pop, and my eyes involuntarily squeezed themselves shut. The creepy wooden groan had come from a spot at the foot of the bed, and despite the warm breeze that now drifted through the open window, a cold chill ran down my spine and set my heart to racing even faster. But I told myself that had to be the result of the wood expanding and contracting due to the warmer weather. Before Ramon left, we had hired 2 men to refinish some of the hardwood floors on the second level, and they had started in the big room at the front of the house the day before. I wondered if their sanding had somehow caused the strange noises I was now hearing. Whatever the reason, if the weird sounds moved all the way around to the right side of the bed, I knew I would be leaving. So I held my breath and waited. The dogs seemed to be holding their breaths as well. There was a loud electric pop outside, and it seemed that the street light in the alley dimmed. 1 minute passed, and then another, the lengthy silence compounding the tension that hung in the darkness. And then another minute went by, and I slowly exhaled as quietly as possible. I listened intently and squinted to better discern any movement made in the near blackness, all the while overcome with the uncomfortable sensation that someone or something was watching me. Bess finally lowered her head and slowly stretched out on the bed, and I cautiously relaxed a bit, my ears still straining for the slightest noise. I turned my head to the right and struggled to make out any shapes in the dim light afforded by the windows, but I still saw nothing. At that moment, the very same long, drawn-out kind of creak reverberated along the hardwood next to the right-hand side of the bed, as if an invisible intruder had taken a step or shifted her weight from one foot to the other while standing there. The loud noise faded into a soft echo, and I heard what sounded like a pluck and strum on the strings of a harp. I flew out from under the covers, grabbed my cell phone and baseball bat, and, making sure the dogs followed behind, ran down the stairs as I pulled on a bathrobe. I picked up my keys in the kitchen, and the door slammed behind us as we ran out the back way and piled into my car. The clock on the cell phone read 3:30 a.m. as I turned the key in the ignition and started to dial Skippy's number to let him know that I would be coming over to spend the night. But as I sat there and looked back at the darkened house, realizing that the windows weren't going to start glowing with an Amityville horror orange, I reconsidered and I hung up the phone before the call went through. I was already getting a fair amount of teasing for some of the strange things that had been happening in the house, so I decided to tough it out. After all, there had to be a perfectly logical explanation for the weird noises. The most likely, I concluded, was that the warmer weather was causing the timbers in the house to expand and contract, and my overactive imagination was simply getting the better of me. Nonetheless, I wasn't ready to go back inside just yet, so I listened to several songs on the radio, and then the dogs reluctantly followed me back into the house. Once inside, I closed the door and listened carefully. Total silence reigned. Still, trying to convince myself that I had imagined the whole affair, I sat down with the dogs in the butler's pantry, and we watched television until the sun came up several hours later. Stifling a yawn, I finally trudged up the back stairs to the bedroom on the second floor, content in the fact that I would be able to manage a couple hours of sleep. As I pulled the covers up under my chin, birds chirped in the branches outside, and it seemed that the house once more had an empty, airy feeling. So there's a little break in our chapter, so now's a good time to have a drink. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I didn't send out an invite or make an event thing on Facebook, but we're, what, night 14 or 15 tonight of Voodoo Days, so we're almost at the end, people. Look, there's only that many pages, so I'm really trying to milk this out. I'm trying to get another 2 nights at least out of it after this night, and then we're gonna have to read other things. So thanks for tuning in. If you're just tuning in, say hi, tell people where you're from, let them know what you're drinking, and we're trying to get the word out about Old Louisville, America's most haunted neighborhood. So can't be giving tours for Louisville Historic Tours, so the next best thing is to get online and tell stories about the neighborhood every night. So if you haven't seen some of the previous videos we've done, all of the story times are on our Facebook or our YouTube channel, Louisville Historic Tours. We're still working on the merch and stuff, so got all kinds of good ideas for t-shirts and things, but stay tuned and we'll let you know when it's all up and ready. There's a couple things up available already, but it's slowly trickling out. Once again, LouisvilleHistoricTours.com. That's the website. That's also the Facebook page. Thanks to Sean Stafford of Hunley Media. He's really doing a great job helping us revamp the things. There's David Stevens in Corbin, Kentucky. Good to have you on tonight. So, yeah, let people know where you're from. Say hi. And let's have fun. Like I said, it's a busy week for me. Classes are ending, so I'm in grading finals and getting tests ready. And all my students are stressing out. So if you haven't seen me much on Facebook, that's why. All day today I've been teaching online and doing oral exams with my students, and looking forward to next week when things kind of taper off a bit. Okay, so let's get back to our chapter. So I went back to bed, took a little early morning nap. Jim Porter's, Gina, yeah, there's a lot of stories about that place, and Jim Porter was an interesting character, but yeah, I don't know. I have to look up more about Jim Porter. If you're from Louisville, everyone knows Jim Porter, so talk amongst yourselves, and those that know who Jim Porter was and what Jim Porter's was, let people know. Yeah, Missy, that's a good idea. People are saying, yeah, something I survived the pandemic with David, or I survived the pandemic in the Magic Library. I think that's a really good one. Okay. All right. Hey, Veronica. Okay. So we're going to pick up just a couple more pages in this chapter, and then we'll try to start the next chapter. Okay. All right. So after I woke up that morning, I took the dogs for a walk. When I came back, the phone was ringing. I picked it up, and who did it turn out to be? Anyone? Yeah, it was Loretti. "Where you been?" she said. "Called you a couple times, but you're never around." "Oh, I've been out and about," I said. "Probably teaching, I guess." "Well, you had some oddballs in the back of your house, so I wanted to call and tell and let you know." In her background, I could hear a television set blaring the music for the start of a game show. "And you had a couple of fat possums, too. Time for you to trap them and drop them off in the East End." "Yeah, I suppose it's time," I said. "It's been a couple months since my last delivery." I laughed to myself. "So what weirdos have you seen this time?" "Saw a couple of those bums from over on Oak Street snooping through your trash, and then I saw that one woman with the turban you're always asking about." She laughed. "She said, she was standing in the back alley staring up at your house when I saw her, but I don't know how long. Maybe she was snooping around in your garbage too. Who knows when you're a bum." "Oh, you saw Josephine?" "Oh, it's been a while since I've last seen her," I said. "I thought maybe she'd left the neighborhood." Well, call her whatever you want. I don't know what her name is, said Loretti. If she's standing in the back alley doing nothing but wearing a funny hat, then I call her a weirdo. Well, that's fine by me, as long as she wasn't getting into any trouble, I said. Like I says, who knows what that freak show was up to before I discovered her. She might have been doing a hula dance on your roof for all I know, but all I saw was her just standing there being a nut job. Loretti coughed loudly into the receiver and cleared her throat. I guess that's what all the bums love doing best down here in old Louisville. Yeah, I suppose you're right, I said, waiting for one of her coughing spells to pass. Thanks for keeping an eye out on me. Not a problem, she said. I'll call you the next time I see another oddball out back. If you're home, that is. Bye. So she hung up, and I decided to run some errands. As I gathered my keys and wallet in the kitchen, I noticed a strong smell of freshly brewed coffee again. The two workmen had arrived and could be heard toiling away on the floors above me, so I walked up to them and I inquired if either of them had made coffee or maybe had brought any along. When they both answered in the negative, adding that they never drank coffee, I tried my best to shake the uneasy feeling that came over me, a slight shudder creeping down my spine. Still hopeful that something logical would explain the weird noises from the night before, I also asked the two men if the sanding and the warmer weather might account for the increase in the creaks and groans that had pervaded the house in the last couple of days. One of them shrugged his shoulders and said, "It happens, I guess," but his coworker gave him a skeptical look. "I never heard it happen before," he said. Not reassured either way, I left the house. So I returned home later that afternoon, eager to check the progress that had been made on the hardwood floors. Although several days had passed since the work had started, most of the time had been spent pulling up the old carpeting and removing nails and staples embedded in the boards. Curious to see if they had managed to sand more than just the front room, I walked into the house and followed the loud drone of the drum sander upstairs. The scent of fresh pine and wood shavings permeated the air, and I made a room-to-room inspection while waiting for the noise to stop. Pleased with the progress that had been made, I walked up behind the two men and said hello when they finally turned off the sander. Both almost jumped out of their skins at the greeting. "Lord, you scared me to death," the older of the two said with a sigh. Oh, he looked at his companion and chuckled uneasily. "Were you in the house about an hour ago?" asked the other worker, casting an uneasy glance over his shoulder. I told them that I just arrived home minutes earlier, and I asked why. "Well, we could have sworn someone was in here with us." Both men looked down the hall towards a small room that sat at the back of the house. "Someone kept slamming the door shut back down there." When I assured them that I had not been in the house since they had last seen me, and I asked them if they had seen anyone else, the younger man scratched his head and scowled. "No, but we sure got the feeling that someone was watching us." "The dogs didn't get out of the front parlor or anything while I was gone, did they?" I asked, suddenly worried that I hadn't properly shut the French doors when I left. "No, they were downstairs the whole time," said the other man. "Well, I'm not sure what it could have been then." I walked to the back room and stuck my head through the door. Since that room was set apart from the other rooms that needed sanding, the workers had decided to save it for last. When they finished the rooms at the front of the house, they would work their way down the hallway and then start sanding the floors in this, the final room. As I stood there and studied the layout, the perfect square with a simple fireplace mantel and wider planks on the floor, a familiar odor hit my nose. "You smell that?" It was the younger of the two men, both of which had followed me back to the room. "Yeah, it smells like someone's been ironing back here," said the other. "Like maybe they burnt something." I nodded my head, and as we stood there, the smell seemed to intensify. Despite the scent of wood and sawdust that had permeated the house when I entered it, this new odor was much more powerful. And after another few seconds, I reached out for the knob to close the door, but there was movement on the mantel shelf. The large hand-painted vase I had placed there several months before was gliding smoothly along the polished surface, all by itself. As if guided by an invisible hand, it slowly slid along for half a foot, and then another foot, and it continued for another foot or so, and came to a stop just inches from the ledge. The three of us exchanged glances, but no one said a word. And that's where that chapter ends. But yeah, we were standing there, and actually, hang on a second. This is the vase, actually. So I collect American Belgican, like old, like late 1800s, early 1900s Vienna porcelain. So this is a Viennese vase. Why are people worried about the candle behind me? I think it's okay. Why? Well, I'll read the comments. But yeah, this is the vase. So, yeah, we were standing there looking at the room, and all of a sudden the vase just started going like this for 3 feet down the mantle. And none of us said anything, like for 30 seconds. I just stood there. I was like, oh, God, I hope they didn't see that. And they were probably like, I wonder if he's going to say anything. And finally, the other guy said, you just saw that, didn't you? And I said, why move the candle? It's okay. I mean, it probably looks a little closer to the shelves than you, but hang on. Okay, we don't have any ambiance now, thanks to all your worry warts. But but yeah, the one guy said, he's like, did you see that? And I was like, yeah, I was hoping you didn't see that. And he goes, yeah. He goes, stuff like that's been happening all the time we've been here. So, oh well. But yeah, that was the end of that chapter. So, how are we doing? So, yeah, we can read a couple more pages before I sign out. Everyone take a drink. Cheers. Where's my other? I need some water. Wet my whistle. Okay, so we'll start our next chapter. Yeah, and here we got another appearance by another character. So let's see how far we get. Like I said, I'm trying to make it last, but we're getting toward the end. Okay, so this chapter is called 13 O'Clock. A couple weeks later, I came home one afternoon, and an unusual sight awaited me in the half-filled swimming pool in the backyard. So it was just warming up again, and we were trying to get the swimming pool ready, but it was only half full. So with pink and yellow dogwoods in full bloom, Derby was just a few days away, and I was hoping to have the pool up and running by then. I'd cleaned everything, and before I left that morning, I turned on the hose and left it to fill up the pool. When I walked through the back gate and up the steps to the wooden deck surrounding the pool, I wasn't surprised to see that it still wasn't full. I was, however, surprised to find my friend Kelly in the pool, floating in the shallow water on a slightly underinflated inner tube. And I was even more surprised to see that he wore only his underwear and the green and black cap of a World War II-era German Wehrmacht officer. The rest of his uniform was draped across a blue and white lawn chair. Polished black boots stood at attention under the patio table. So when Kelly saw me, he smiled and raised a hand in salute before removing the hat and waving it in the air. Overhead, the thin white stamp of a daytime full moon had left its image on a beautiful blue sky. Mein Kapitän, wie geht's? He cried out. It is a perfect day for the mint julep, so I thought I would stop by. Suppressing a grin, I told him to hurry up, put on his clothes, and come inside, since I didn't really want any of my neighbors to think I was having poolside cocktails with a Nazi soldier. Jawohl, jawohl, mein Herr. He scrambled up the pool ladder and grabbed his uniform, then followed me through the back door to the butler's pantry, where he sat down at the small breakfast table. While the dogs greeted him, all the comments are coming in. Yeah, Crazy Kelly A, Crazy Kelly Atkins. Everyone knows who we're talking about. And seriously, even today, Kelly wears his Nazi uniforms. He goes out and gets in fights with people. So you ask him about that, all right? If Kelly or Suze is on tonight, you can feel free to chime in, all right? So while the dogs greeted him, I went to the bar and pulled out a bottle of green chartreuse, which I mixed in a shaker with mulled mint, sugar, lemon juice, and crushed ice. I poured it into 2 glasses and handed one to Kelly. Here, try this instead of a mint julep. I saw something similar in one of my cooking magazines the other day, and I thought it would taste good. It's kind of like a jazzed up mint julep, but with chartreuse in place of bourbon. It's a recipe I'm working on. So I held the glass up to the sun streaming through the window and studied the bits of mint suspended in the green liquid. Ah, Carthusian splendor indeed, he said in his best W.C. Fields voice again. Taking a long sip, he swallowed and smacked his lips. Not bad at all. I took a tentative drink and decided I liked the bright taste of citrus combined with the vegetal undertones of the chartreuse. It's a nice change at this time of year when everyone's got mint juleps coming out of their ears, I said. Kelly took another swallow and put his glass down on the table. His expression became earnest. So, what's this I hear about things moving around in this house now? It seems like you've got something serious, brother. Oh, you mean the vase sliding across the mantel shelf in the little room upstairs? I pointed to the ceiling above us. I think I may have come up with an explanation for that. You have an explanation for things moving on your own? He reached down, picked up Bess, and lifted her to his lap. Sounds like kinetic energy or invisible hands would be the explanation to me. Well, maybe, I said, but the day that happened, I had polished all the furniture in that room, including the mantelpiece, so it was very, very slick. Outside the window, a blue jay had perched on the ledge. It jerked its head and seemed to stare at me through the wavy panes of glass. Not only that, I continued, I took a level up there and checked the shelf, and it's almost a whole degree off. So it slopes slightly in one direction, and that's the direction the vase slid. That must be it. Kelly gave me a skeptical look. And how far did you say it moved? Well, I didn't really measure anything, I said, but it had to be at least 2-3 feet. I'll freely admit that I'm no master carpenter, but I do know a little something about woodworking, said Kelly. And I can tell you that a big vase isn't just going to slide 2 feet because of a little furniture polish and a 1-degree incline. There was a lapping noise, and when we looked down for the source, we discovered it was Bess. Taking advantage of her proximity to Kelly's drink, she had leaned her head over the crook of his arm and was eagerly slurping up the last of his cocktail. Bess, I scolded, what are you doing? Laughing, I reached out to take her from Kelly's lap and return her to the ground. And Bess, she was famous for that. If you left your drink, left anything with liquid in it, alcoholic, she'd go there and just lap it up. So we remember her fondly for doing that. But Kelly waved me off and hugged the dog closer to his chest. In my lap, La Senorita Boozehound shall remain, he said. Nothing wrong with a little canine cocktail every now and then, is there? He addressed the question to Bess as he affectionately scratched the top of her head. Have it your way, I said, but just don't get her drunk on me. So I got up and returned to the bar. It's time for another round anyway, so hang on a sec. I mixed up another batch and handed a fresh glass to Kelly. Thank you, he said, going back to his W.C. Fields voice. After sipping off a layer of the drink, he lowered the glass to Bess and let her sip off several tonguefuls. Patting her head, he set his drink down on the table, safely out of reach from her this time, and he resumed his previous serious tone. Really, though, you need to find out what's going on in this house, he said. It could be demonic, for all you know. I scoffed at the notion of demonic forces at work in La Casa Fabulosa and adopted a serious tone instead. Oh, I don't really know about that. If there's anything paranormal afoot, I'm sure it's not malevolent, I said. After all, the things that happen here are perfectly harmless. I stirred my cocktail and took a drink, and most skeptics would point out that these occurrences could be explained away. Believe what you will, said Kelly, but I say there's something afoot in this house, and it won't go away until you find out what it is. He raised his eyebrows and fixed me with a stare. But instead of saying anything, I raised my glass and took another drink. Just like now. There's a good chapter break. So cheers, everyone. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we can do a couple more pages, so we're going to pick up after the break in this chapter and see where we end up. Okay, so thanks again for tuning in, everyone. Say hi. I love seeing all the back and forth. I love seeing all the new friendships. People are excited about being on the other side and getting to meet each other in person for real. So, like I said, we are going to do a reunion, so it'll definitely have to be Central Park. And a couple months, 3-4 months, in the fall maybe, right around Halloween, that might be a good time. But if you're in this area, plan on it for sure. And if you live out of state or far away, you know, you got a couple months, 3-4 months to start planning. So make sure you plan on a reunion for us all, where we can hang out in Central Park and have a potluck or something and see everyone in person and reminisce about the days we made it through the quarantine in the Magic Library. All right. So let's pick up. Oh, I just thought of something. One thing I can read is, so I told you I can probably read the first couple chapters of my true crime book, The House in Old Louisville, and we heard about the story of the Richard Robinson house and the grisly murder. There's the Atkins, so I hope you enjoyed your cameo, Kelly. But I can probably do 2 or 3 nights reading the opening of my true crime book, The House in Old Louisville, which, as we said, is probably going to be called A Murder in Glitterball City, if my agent says it's not such a big deal. But then I have another book I forgot all about. I need to get it finished, but I have a murder mystery series set in Old Louisville, and the protagonist is a drag queen by the name of Poo Poo Chiffon, who lives on Ormsby Avenue. And so I have this murder mystery where I've got about 2/3 of it done, and there's a little twist I'm trying to figure out. But yeah, I've got a whole series planned for this this old Louisville murder mystery, and her name is Poo Poo Chiffon, and she lives on Ormsby Avenue, and she is in a drag troupe. She's the lead, but her friends in her drag troupe are Ramona Ruffles, Papaya Squeeze, and Cornelia Sauerbraten. And their friend Abella Armitage is murdered. So they're not getting a lot of help from the police, so they have to kind of solve the murder of what happened to Abella Armitage. So I can actually read a couple chapters from that as well. So yeah, once we're through with this, I can probably get you another week or 2 for sure. But yeah, we'll definitely do Poo Poo Chiffon. I forgot all about that. That might give me some motivation to get that book finished, by the way. All right? So, got off on a tangent. Where was I? We had a chapter break, right? Oh, Lord. I lost my spot. Oh, yeah, I really lost my spot. I'm back in the evil eye. Oh, by the way, last night, if I remember correctly, that was Cookie's last appearance. And I'm sad to say that The last time I saw Cookie, which was like 6, 7 months ago, he was homeless and living in Central Park. So Cookie's still out there, but the last I know, he was homeless. So maybe next time I see him, he'll be in better circumstances. Okay. All right. Where? Yeah. All right. Here, I'm back. I found my spot. So remember, Kelly had been there. He's trying to tell me something is going on, and I just raised my glass and took another drink, which is what we all just did. All right. Almost 2 weeks had passed since Ramon had gone off to Texas, and he was set to return the next day. After Kelly left, I did some yard work and tested a few more recipes for my cookbook. When I finally had a chance to take the dogs out for a walk, it was already dark. We strolled all the way down 3rd Street to the old Confederate War Veterans Memorial at the University of Louisville, and then returned down 2nd Street, where large portions of the sidewalk were framed in a canopy of flowering pear trees. It had been a busy day, so I decided to turn in early when I got home. Tuckered out from their long walk, the dogs had curled up in the butler's pantry and gone to sleep almost immediately, so I left them downstairs. That Middle Eastern man cursed Cookie, and that's why I ended up homeless. Sue, I don't know how old he is, but I'd say in his 60s, just, guessing. But yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, we heard last night how that the guy in the sheik's entourage kind of smoked Cookie. Maybe that's why I ended up homeless. I don't know. All right. But so it'd been a busy day, so I decided to turn in early when I got home. Tuckered out from their long walk, the dogs had curled up in the butler's pantry and gone to sleep almost immediately, so I left them downstairs. Looking forward to a long and restful sleep, I turned out all of the lights, and since it was a bit warm outside, I switched on the fan at the side of the bed before jumping under the covers. Within 15 minutes, I had started to doze, lulled by the slight breeze generated by the softly humming fan. About an hour before midnight, what sounded like 3 loud knocks at the back door woke me. I sat in bed, and I sat up and turned on the light after rubbing the tiredness from my eyes. Not certain that I had actually heard someone knocking at the back door, I sat for several seconds and I waited. Then rap, 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 3 long knocks echoed from down in the kitchen. Well, who could it be? Was it one of the gang stopping by unannounced for a nightcap, which happened a lot? It had happened before, so I grabbed the cell phone and I shuffled down the stairs to the back door. Not more than 15 or 20 seconds could have passed before I opened it. But instead of a late-night visitor, I found no one standing in the doorway. I stepped outside and looked around. What are you VG? Who is that, VG Evers? I have no idea who that is, but it's disturbing. Okay. But instead of a late-night visitor, I found no one standing in the doorway. I stepped outside and looked around. The perimeter gate at the side was back. The perimeter gates at the side and back were tightly closed, and there was no indication that anyone had used them to exit the backyard. I listened intently for the sound of retreating footsteps or any other signs of life, and then I called out to see who was there. Aside from my voice, echoing off the old bricks lining the alley, I was met with silence. So I walked back into the kitchen and I closed the door. As I passed through the butler's pantry to return upstairs, I noticed the 3 dogs still curled up on the couch, as I had left them before I went to bed. Funny, I thought to myself, whatever had woke me up had failed to rouse them. I wondered if I should wake the dogs to make sure they were okay, but I decided against it and let them sleep, and I went up the stairs instead. My left hand brushing over the smooth railing as I ascended, I paused halfway up when my ears caught a slight rustling noise somewhere off in the darkness. I stopped and listened for a second, trying to to ascertain the direction it was coming from. It sounded like it came from somewhere up on the third floor, but I couldn't tell for sure. Puzzled, I listened, and again I could hear the strange noise. Whoosh, whoosh. I couldn't figure out what kind of sound it was, much less where it came from, but it was a definite whoosh, whoosh. I scurried to the upper floors and made my way down from one room to the next in search of the sound. After almost 10 minutes, I'd gone from room to room and scoured every room in the house. Eventually, I found myself in the TV room at the front of the house on the second floor. I decided to give up and go back to bed when the weird noise started up again. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. I walked out in the hallway and listened. Several moments later, the same thing. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. I was almost positive it was coming from my office on the third floor, so I went back up and looked around. But up on the top floor, all was quiet. I listened for several more minutes, and I looked around a bit. Then I gave up and returned to the bedroom, thoroughly convinced that I had to be imagining things. I was about to lay myself down on the bed when I heard the sound again. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Now certain that I was really hearing something on the third floor, I rushed back up the steps and I turned on the light in my office. I kept still and waited. There was no sound, but I stayed still and I made sure I waited until I heard the sound again. When the strange noise finally repeated itself a minute later, I felt totally foolish. I had recently installed, hey Steve Spratt, a new screensaver on the desktop, and since I had forgotten to turn off the computer before I went to bed, I was hearing the sound of bubbles as they whoosh whoosh to the surface of the virtual aquarium that popped up on the screen every 10 minutes. Good grief, I slapped off the light and went back down to bed. Lying in the cool darkness, I realized I was no longer tired, though. After tossing and turning for several minutes, I decided to pull out a copy of The Binghams of Louisville and read myself back to sleep. But a minute later, my cell phone began vibrating on the nightstand. It was Skippy. "What are you up tonight?" he said. "I'm bored." "Why are you calling so late?" I said. "What are you talking about?" he said. "It's not even midnight yet." "I know, but I was in bed already." Reaching behind me, I propped up a pillow and leaned back against the headboard. "Why so early? You never go to bed this early," he said. "I thought we could go out and get a drink or something." "Oh, not anymore," I laughed. "I think I'm in for the night. Having a house has turned me into an old fuddy-duddy, I guess." "Party pooper," he said. "I don't know why you'd want to stay in that house all alone on a night like this when you could be out somewhere else having fun anyway," he said. From the other end, I could hear him pop the top off a bottle of beer and take a long, drawn-out gulp. "By the way, anything else happened lately in that weird old house?" "Well," I said, "funny you should ask. Because I was asleep right before you called, and something woke me up because I could hear these rap, rap, rap. As if on cue, another series of measured knocks echoed from downstairs, presumably at the back door. Hang on a sec. I sprang from the bed, but instead of running down the back stairs, I raced to the small room at the back of the house, on the second floor, and peered through the window that overlooked the backyard. Directly below me, I could see the steps leading up to the back door. Except for a squirrel illuminated by the stark glare of the streetlight as it perched on the fence, the area was empty. Quickly doing some mental tallying, it couldn't have taken me more than 5 seconds to reach the window. I rushed through the hallway to the large room at the other end of the house to see if I couldn't intercept an interloper trying to sneak around the sides of the house. I threw open one pair of shutters, lifted the window, and looked outside. Other than some spooky shadows thrown by the neighbor's shrubbery, nothing showed itself in the front yard. Across the street loomed the dark form of the Hillebrandt house, buttery light shining through a handful of square windows. I looked up on the top floor, but Loretti's window was dark. I waited to see if the light would flash on and off, but nothing came. and I closed the window and shutters before returning to my cell phone, which I had thrown on the bed in my haste to discover the source of the knocking. "Sorry," I said, picking up the phone. "You still there?" "Yeah, what was that all about?" In the background, I could hear the soft strains of jazz music lilting from his Bose player. "Well, that's what I was going to tell you about," I said. I walked out into the hall and flipped on the light, suddenly overcome with thirst. "Someone keeps knocking at the back door, but when I get there, they're gone. Maybe I'm hearing things." I nodded my head and headed downstairs through the long hallway. "You mean those loud knocks I just heard through the phone a minute ago?" Skippy sounded alarmed. "Well, I guess I must be hearing things too then, because I definitely heard something knocking." "Oh, so I'm not going crazy then." I approached the back stairs and reached out for the railing. "Well, I'm not going to say you're not going crazy, but I did hear knocking," Skippy laughed. I was about to take my first step down the steps when someone knocked at the back door a third time. "Here we go again," said Skippy, his voice trailing off as I dropped the hand holding the phone down at my side, and I sprinted to the window overlooking the back step. Rap, rap, rap. The loud knocks echoed once more, and a few seconds later I stood at the rear window, looking down over the backyard. As before, the backyard was empty, and it didn't appear possible that someone could have knocked and disappeared altogether in a split second. Wondering if someone was playing a prank, I put the phone back up to my ear and I ran down the stairs to the foyer. Giving Skippy a breathy progress report, I yanked open the front door and walked outside. I walked around the house and eventually I found myself in the backyard. "Did you find anyone?" he asked. "No." Taking one last look around the backyard, I scratched my head. If there was someone here, they must be awfully fast. Then I walked around the other side of the house and returned to the front door. The door locked behind me. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of orange juice. "What are you going to do?" "About what?" "About the weirdness in your house." "Oh, I'm sure it's not that bad," I said. "There's got to be a logical explanation." "Uh-huh." Skippy didn't sound very convinced. I finished my orange juice, rinsed out the glass, and set it on the sink before turning out the light in the kitchen. It was probably some kid playing a prank or something like that. Rocky, Bess, and Fritz snored softly on the sofa in the butler's pantry. I walked past them and went to the foyer to turn out the light. "Or you," I said. "Are you sure you're not down here playing a prank on me yourself?" "I'm at home listening to Diana Krall, and I haven't been out all day," he said. "That's why I was calling you. I was getting antsy." "Well, then somebody else must be pranking me," I said. "Call me if your head starts spinning around and you start throwing up pea soup all over the place," Skippy said. "Sure thing." A laugh escaped as I mounted the servant stairs, but then I cut myself short and I stopped mid-step. Two large windows covered with lace curtains flanked the exterior wall to my right, and I was startled to see that the bottom frill of the curtains nearest me appeared to be jumping about and skipping over the sash. It seemed that invisible hands had reached up under the hem of the curtain and were fluffing the material. Taking a step backward, I waited for the jumping curtain to settle down, but instead of ceasing, the activity increased and the frilly bottom part of the curtain started jumping even higher off the sash. I said. What?" Skippy stopped laughing. "What's going on now?" I reached my hand out tentatively to see if a breeze could be felt, but there was no sign of wind or any other force that might be causing the curtains to flutter. "What's going on?" I began to stutter a narrative of what I was seeing, but the lacy piece of fabric suddenly stopped fluttering and it settled down against the window pane. Then, as suddenly as it had stopped, the lower edge of the curtain flew up and started to flap in front of me. "You're not going to believe this," I said, "but I'm in the back stairwell, and one of the lace curtains on these big windows is going crazy on me." Curtain going crazy? He said with a laugh. What are you talking about? I don't know. I took another step back, but it's fluttering around like there's a strong wind blowing through the window. Well, is the window open? There's probably a draft or something, or a wind coming in, he said. Well, I considered the possibility and I reached out my hand to double check the window. Then I recalled something that made me withdraw my fingers. No, there's no draft coming through these windows at all. I thought back to a day 2 weeks before when I'd spent most of the afternoon painting the wainscoting and wooden trim in the back stairwell. The previous owners had these windows nailed shut, and I caulked and painted over them myself a couple of weeks ago. With that, the curtain stopped fluttering and fell back against the pane. There is something going on in that house, he said. You want to come over here and just spend the night? Cautiously, I put my hand up to the window to make sure a large crack hadn't, let air through. But I couldn't see anything that appeared to account for a crack. Not so much as the faintest breeze could be felt. Nah, I'm fine, I said. It's probably nothing at all. There's got to be a weird draft coming from the third floor or something. You know how these old houses are. Then I backed down the stairs and entered the foyer, where I studied the face of the grandmother clock tick-tocking away. It was already after 1. All right, suit yourself, he said. I'm going out for a drink. If you need anything, call me. I hung up the phone and went to the bedroom, making sure to use the stairs at the front of the house instead of the back stairs. 2 minutes later, I was back in bed with the pillows propping me up so I could finish reading the chapter I'd started earlier. By the time the grandmother clock chimed by the half hour, sleep had started to reclaim me, and I put the book on the table, turned off the light, and rolled over under the blanket. Within several minutes, I drifted off, the faint chirp of crickets coming through the open window next to my bed. But sometime later, the insistent knocking roused me. Grumbling to myself, I opened my eyes and listened. It came again. Rap, rap, rap. Good grief, I said out loud to no one in particular. You gotta be kidding me. I hugged the pillow closer and refused to get out of bed. I'm ignoring you, whatever you are, so just go away. Downstairs, the clock in the foyer struck 2, the melodious clang of its somber chimes filling the house. I squeezed my eyes shut and easily willed myself back to sleep, stirring only slightly when a lone chime off in the distance marked the next half hour. Rap, rap, rap. I instinctively grabbed the cell phone when the next set of knocks woke me up shortly before 3. Eyelids drooping heavily, I confirmed the time and mumbled into the pillow. Pound all you want, but I'm not getting out of bed. I covered my head with the pillow. Once again, the rapping noises came, this time seeming to come in response to my complaint. It sounded like it originated in the small room at the back of the house. However, so I raised my head and I listened. Several uneventful minutes passed and I cautiously lowered my head back to the pillow. After several more minutes, I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. But the noise came again. Rap, rap, rap. I groaned and hopped out of bed, fighting back the sleep that tugged at my eyelids. I trundled down the hallway to the room at the rear. Flipping on the light, I walked through the door and looked around and saw nothing. I stooped and peered out the window to see if anyone was in the backyard, but there was nobody there. There was nothing there. I turned to leave the room, but stopped when a faint whiff of smoke met my nostrils. Slightly acrid yet pleasant, it smelled like someone had started a wood fire. I waited another half minute and became alarmed when the smell of smoke began to intensify. Convinced that a fire had broken out in the kitchen, I ran down to the back stairs, past the dog still sleeping on the couch, and I turned on the light over the stove. Sniffing loudly as I moved along, I examined the outlet behind the stove and then moved to the one behind the refrigerator. Once I convinced myself that neither of them had appeared ready to burst into flames, I checked the other plug-ins on the wall. All was well in the kitchen, where there wasn't even the slightest trace of smoke or odor. Then I opened the door to the basement and went down for an inspection. Everything was fine there as well. Then I went backstairs up to my bedroom, and I quickly ran from room to room, relieved to discover that the smell of smoke had dissipated. 10 minutes later, I stood in the second-floor hallway outside the little room, anxious to return to bed and salvage at least a portion of the night's sleep. The light still burned in the small room, so I walked down the hall to turn it off, but as I entered the doorway, I was quickly overcome by the pungent smell of charred wood. I looked around the room and was amazed to find no sign of a fire. I yanked the chain on the ceiling fan and opened the window on the other side of the room, but after 5 minutes, the strong smell of smoldering wood still lingered. I got down on my hands and knees and examined each of the outlets in the room, and none of them felt warm. None appeared to give off an odor. So I pulled a chair out from a nearby dressing table and stood on it to inspect the light fixture that dangled from the ceiling. That didn't seem to be the cause either. I put the chair back and stood in front of the fireplace where the odor was most intense. Maybe I smelled residue from a long ago fire, I told myself. Dong! Downstairs, the grandmother clock in the foyer marked the half hour with its usual single chime. Leaving the room, I looked at my cell phone and saw that it was 3:30. Dong! I scratched my head and debated calling the fire department. Dong! I suddenly became aware that something wasn't quite right. Dong! I waited for a couple of seconds and then I realized the clock was still chiming. I raced out of the room and ran to the front stairs. Dong! I paused on the landing before going down, the measured tick-tock of the pendulum becoming more audible. I grabbed the railing and tried to ascend the steps slowly and silently as the chimes continued. As my foot hit the very last step, another dong rang out from the grandmother clock, and then I saw the swaying pendulum come to a stop as the clock went silent. It had chimed 13 times again. One by one, I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck bristle and stand up. So that's where we're going to leave off tonight. So thanks for tuning in for another night at La Casa Fabulosa, my unconventional memoir about my time living in a supposedly haunted house in Old Louisville, one of the largest historic preservation districts in the entire country. So we'll see if we got more chimes tomorrow night, but only a couple more nights and we're going to be done with this. So thanks again to all the people who've been going on Amazon.com and leaving me nice reviews, and people going on TripAdvisor and leaving nice reviews for Louisville Historic Tours. Looking forward to when this is all over and we can be out and roaming the streets of Old Louisville together and hearing these stories and seeing these places up close and personal. So hang in there, everyone. Hope you're all doing well and are in good spirits. Made it through another day. So thanks for tuning in and giving me something to look forward to every night. And take care and have a good night's sleep. And we'll see you all tomorrow night, okay? So thank you, everyone. Love you all. We'll see you tomorrow night.